The stars looked peaceful that morning. Jake Morrison stood by the large window of his ship's bridge, watching Earth spin slowly below. The planet glowed blue and green in the sunlight. White clouds drifted across the oceans. Everything seemed calm and normal. Jake was the captain of Freedom's Dawn, a human exploration ship. He had been in space for 5 years now, ever since humans figured out how to travel faster than light. It still amazed him sometimes. Just 10 years ago, nobody thought humans would ever leave their own solar system. Now they were meeting aliens from across the galaxy. A sound from the control panel made him turn around. Lisa Wright, his second in command, was staring at her screen with wide eyes. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "Captain," she said quietly, "we have incoming ships. 7 of them. Big ones." Jake walked over to look at her display. Sure enough, 7 massive shapes were appearing on the sensors. They came out of hyperspace one after another, like giant whales breaking the surface of an ocean. Each ship was at least 3 times bigger than any human vessel. "Are they hostile?" Jake asked. "I don't think so," Lisa replied. "They're transmitting a greeting. It's from the Galactic Council." Jake felt a small knot form in his stomach. The Galactic Council. Humans had been hearing about them for 3 years now, ever since first contact. The Council was supposedly a group of advanced alien species who kept peace in the galaxy. They had rules, laws, and plenty of opinions about how younger species should behave. They also treated humans like children. "Put them on screen," Jake said. The main display flickered to life. A tall alien appeared, standing in what looked like the bridge of one of those enormous ships. The creature had 4 arms, gray skin that seemed to shimmer, and eyes that looked like blue crystals. This was Ambassador Velcara, a member of the Zenithian species. Jake had met him once before at a diplomatic meeting on a neutral space station. "Captain Morrison," Velcara said. His voice came through perfectly translated by the ship's computer. "We are pleased to find you well. However, we bring urgent news. May we speak with your planetary leaders?" Jake glanced at Dan Cooper, his first officer, who was sitting at another console. Dan raised his eyebrows but said nothing. Something about this felt off. The Council didn't usually show up with 7 warships just to chat. "I can relay messages to Earth Command," Jake said carefully. "But perhaps you should tell me what this is about first." Velcara's crystalline eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. "Very well. We have detected a fleet approaching your system. The Dracor Horde. They are conquerors, Captain Morrison, destroyers of worlds. They have wiped out 50 civilizations in the past 100 years. The bridge went quiet. Jake could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines, the quiet beep of monitors. Lisa stopped typing. Dan turned his chair to face the screen. "When will they arrive?" Jake asked. 3 days, Velcara replied. "Perhaps 4, Captain. The Dracor are not like other species you may have encountered. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They come, they conquer, and they move on. Your species is young. You have barely left your home system. You are not prepared for this threat." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Ambassador, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to defend ourselves." Velcara made a gesture with one of his 4 hands. It might have been sympathy or maybe it was pity. Jake couldn't tell. "Captain, you do not understand. The Dracor have weapons that can shatter moons. They have shields that can withstand nuclear blasts. Your species has achieved faster than light travel only recently. You have what, 50 warships? 100 at most?" "Something like that," Jake said quietly. "The Dracor are bringing 30 vessels," Velcara continued. "Each one is more powerful than your entire fleet combined. This is why the Galactic Council has come. We have sworn to protect primitive species from extinction. We will evacuate your leaders, your scientists, your artists. We will preserve your culture, your history. When the Dracor have moved on, perhaps in 50 or 100 years, we can help you rebuild." Dan Cooper made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. Jake shot him a warning look, then turned back to the screen. "Ambassador Velcara," Jake said slowly, "we appreciate your concern. Truly we do. But I don't think Earth will be evacuating. We have our own defenses." Velcara's expression changed. His crystal eyes dimmed slightly. "Captain Morrison, please understand. This is not pride speaking. This is reality. The Dracor have destroyed species far more advanced than yours. Civilizations that had traveled the stars for millennia fell before them in days. Your bravery is admirable, but it will not save your world." "Perhaps," Jake said, "but we'll make that choice ourselves." "Thank you for the warning, Ambassador. If you'll excuse me, I need to report this to Earth Command. Wait, Velkara said quickly. At least let us coordinate our defense. The Council fleet will position itself between Earth and the approaching Dracor. We can buy you time to evacuate your population to underground shelters or to your moon bases. Please, Captain. We have seen this happen too many times before. We know how this ends. Jake looked at Lisa and Dan. Both of them had the same expression on their faces. It was the look people got when they knew a secret that nobody else did. When they knew something important that would change everything. Ambassador, Jake said finally, position your ships however you want. But I think you're going to be very surprised by what happens when the Dracor arrive. Surprised? Velkara looked confused. Captain, what do you mean? Jake allowed himself a small smile. You've been watching Earth for 3 years, haven't you? Since we first achieved faster than light travel. You've seen our exploration ships. You've talked to our diplomats. You've read our history files. Yes, Velkara said. We have studied your species carefully. We know you are intelligent, creative, and resilient. But Captain, intelligence and creativity cannot stand against the weapons the Dracor will bring to bear. That's where you're wrong, Dan Cooper said suddenly. He stood up from his console and walked over to stand next to Jake. Ambassador, you studied our history. Did you pay attention to what you read? Of course, Velkara replied. We know of your conflicts, your world wars, your nuclear weapons, but those are primitive technologies compared to what exists in the galaxy. Surely you understand this. Jake shook his head slowly. Ambassador, I don't think you understand what those wars taught us. What they made us become. But you will. In 3 days when the Dracor arrive, you'll see exactly what humans are capable of. And I have a feeling both you and the Dracor are going to learn a very important lesson. What lesson? Velkara asked. That you have no idea who you're facing, Jake said quietly. Then he reached forward and ended the transmission. 3 days passed quickly. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of Earth's main orbital defense platform. The station, called Sentinel Prime, floated high above the planet. From here, she could see everything happening in Earth's space. Every ship, every satellite, every piece of debris was tracked on the massive display screens around her. Kate was 52 years old and had been in the military her entire adult life. She had gray hair that she kept short, sharp blue eyes, and a reputation for staying calm in any crisis. Right now, that reputation was about to be tested. Admiral, one of her officers called out, the Dracor fleet is entering the system. 30 vessels confirmed. They're coming in fast. Kate walked to the main tactical display. The Dracor ships appeared as red dots at the edge of the solar system. They were still far away, near where Pluto orbited, but they were moving toward Earth at incredible speed. Each ship was enormous, the sensors showed. Some were as big as small cities. The Dracor vessels looked different from anything humans or the Council used. Their hulls were dark, almost black. They seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it. Watching them move across the display was like watching holes in space drift closer and closer. All defense stations, go to battle-ready status, Kate ordered. Her voice was steady and calm. Activate all weapon systems. Bring shields to full power. And somebody get me a line to Ambassador Velkara. He's about to have a very bad day. Around Earth, systems that had been waiting silently suddenly came to life. Gun turrets on orbital platforms rotated to point at the approaching enemy. Missile tubes opened. Energy weapons powered up with a low hum that vibrated through the metal floors. The 7 Council ships that had been orbiting Earth for 3 days moved into position. They formed a line between Earth and the approaching Dracor fleet. It looked brave. It looked noble. Kate knew it was also completely useless. Ambassador Velkara's face appeared on one of Kate's screens. He looked worried. His crystal eyes were flickering with different colors, which Kate had learned meant he was stressed. Admiral Sullivan, he said quickly, the Dracor will be in weapons range in 10 minutes. I am transmitting our defense plan now. We will engage them first. This should give you time to evacuate your civilian population to underground shelters. Please, you must begin immediately. Ambassador, Kate replied, our civilians are already in shelters, but not because they're evacuating. They're there because they want to watch the battle on the news feeds without getting hurt by falling debris. Velkara looked confused. Watch the battle? Admiral, this is not entertainment. This is an extinction-level threat. Just watch, Ambassador, Kate said. You'll understand soon. The Dracor fleet reached the Council's defensive line. For a moment, nothing happened. The 30 dark ships hung in space facing the 7 Council vessels. Then a transmission came through. It was broadcast on all frequencies meant for everyone to hear. The voice was deep, rough like gravel grinding against metal. It spoke through translation software, but even the translation couldn't hide the cruelty in it. I am Warlord Crixtor of the Dracor Horde. The planet called Earth is now claimed by the Horde. Any who resist will be destroyed. Council vessels, you have 1 minute to withdraw or be eliminated. Velkara responded immediately. Warlord Crixtor, the Galactic Council has taken Earth under its protection. We will not withdraw. If you attack this world, you attack the Council itself. There was a pause. Then Crixtor laughed. It was a horrible sound. The Council protects nothing but its own arrogance. You cannot stop us. You never could. The Dracor opened fire. Beams of red plasma shot across space. They hit the Council ships before Velkara could even give an order to return fire. The first beam struck a Zenithian cruiser directly in the middle. The ship's shields held for maybe 2 seconds, then collapsed. The cruiser broke in half, venting atmosphere and debris into the void. A second Council ship tried to maneuver, but the Dracor weapons were too fast. Another plasma beam carved through its engines. The vessel spun out of control, fires burning across its hull. Kate watched silently as the battle unfolded. It wasn't really a battle at all. It was a slaughter. The Council ships were firing back now, their own weapons sending blue and green beams toward the Dracor fleet, but the enemy shields absorbed every shot. Nothing got through. Admiral, one of Kate's officers said quietly, the Council is losing. 2 ships destroyed, 3 badly damaged. They won't last 5 more minutes. I know, Kate said. She tapped a control on her console. All right. I think the ambassador has learned his lesson. Time to end this. Send the signal. Deploy all fleets. Her officer hesitated. All fleets, Admiral? Are you sure? Kate smiled. It was not a kind smile. All of them. Let's show these Dracor what a real military looks like. The officer pressed a button. Across the entire solar system, hidden ships received the signal. They had been waiting, silent and invisible, for exactly this moment. What happened next made every sensor in the system go crazy. Ships appeared. Not 7 ships. Not 30 ships. Thousands of ships. They came from behind the moon where they had been hiding in the shadows. They came from Mars' orbit, where they had been powered down to avoid detection. They came from the asteroid belt, from Jupiter's moons, from positions all across the solar system. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and massive dreadnoughts bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each human ship was sleek and modern. Their hulls were white and silver, marked with the blue emblem of Earth. They moved with precision, forming up into perfect combat formations. Thousands of vessels all appearing at once, surrounding the Dracor fleet from every direction. On Kate's tactical display, the 30 red dots representing the Dracor suddenly found themselves surrounded by thousands of blue dots. The enemy ships stopped moving. They just hung there in space, as if they couldn't believe what their sensors were telling them. Ambassador Velkara's voice came through on the communication channel. He sounded shocked, almost breathless. What is this? These are all human vessels? But you said... Captain Morrison said you had 50 ships, maybe 100. Kate's smile grew wider. Actually, Ambassador, if you check that conversation recording, Captain Morrison never said that. You assumed it. You saw our exploration ships and our diplomatic vessels, and you assumed that was all we had. You assumed we were weak because we seemed peaceful. But there are thousands, Velkara whispered. 3,742 combat vessels, to be exact, Kate said calmly. Each one equipped with weapons and defenses that make Dracor technology look primitive. We've been building this fleet for 5 years, Ambassador. While you were watching our exploration ships poke around the nearby stars, we were preparing for exactly this kind of situation. Another voice broke into the channel. It was rough and angry. Warlord Crixtor, this changes nothing, humans. We are still Dracor. We do not fear numbers, Kate laughed. It was a cold sound. Warlord, you should fear numbers. But more than that, you should fear what those numbers represent. Every single one of these ships is crewed by humans who grew up hearing stories about war. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every tactic, every strategy, and now we've turned all that knowledge toward protecting our home. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on the display showing Krixtor's massive flagship. You wanted to conquer Earth, Warlord. Big mistake. You have exactly one chance to surrender peacefully. I suggest you take it. The Dracor fleet sat silent in space, surrounded by thousands of human warships. And for the first time in their long history of conquest, the mighty Dracor horde realized they might have made a terrible mistake. The silence lasted for almost a full minute. 3,000 human warships surrounded the 30 Dracor vessels. Nobody moved. Nobody fired. The galaxy seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Then from the Bridge of Freedom's dawn, a sound echoed across every communication channel. It was laughter. Captain Jake Morrison was laughing. It wasn't nervous laughter. It wasn't the laughter of someone who was scared or trying to hide fear. It was genuine, honest, amused laughter. The kind of laugh someone makes when they hear a really good joke. And right now to Jake Morrison, this entire situation was hilarious. I'm sorry, Jake said, trying to control himself. I'm sorry, it's just, this is too perfect. Ambassador Velcara, you came here to protect us because you thought we were weak. Warlord Krixtor, you came here to conquer us because you thought we were easy prey, and now you're both just floating there, probably trying to figure out how you got everything so wrong. He took a deep breath and his laughter faded. When he spoke again, his voice was serious. Warlord Krixtor, let me explain something to you. You've conquered 50 worlds. That's impressive. But do you know how many wars humans have fought? Thousands. Do you know how many humans have died in those wars? Billions. We've been killing each other since we learned how to pick up sticks and rocks. We got very, very good at it. On his display screen, Jake could see the Dracor flagship. It was massive, covered in weapons and armor, but now it just sat there unmoving. He imagined Krixtor on that bridge, trying to understand what was happening. Computer, Jake said. Show full fleet specifications. Broadcast to all vessels, friendly and hostile. A new display appeared, visible to every ship in the system. It showed detailed information about the human fleet. Ship classes, weapon types, shield strength, everything. The numbers were staggering. Lisa Wright stood next to Jake, reading off the statistics. 3,742 combat vessels. 1,500 destroyers, each armed with railguns that can fire metal slugs at 30% light speed. 800 cruisers with energy weapons that can slice through any known shield technology. 300 carriers holding a total of 15,000 fighter craft. And 50 dreadnoughts, each one bigger than your flagship, Warlord. She paused, then added, Oh, and that's just the deep space fleet. We also have 2,000 orbital defense platforms around Earth, 500 weapon satellites around Mars, and enough missiles in our asteroid belt bases to fight a war for 10 years straight. Ambassador Velcara's voice came through, shaking slightly. This is not possible. We monitored your development. We watched your species for 3 years. You showed us exploration vessels, not warships. You attended diplomatic meetings. You talked about peace and cooperation. Dan Cooper, Jake's first officer, answered him. Ambassador, everything we told you was true. We do want peace. We do want cooperation. But we also learned something important during our history. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. When we developed faster than light travel, we knew we'd be entering a dangerous galaxy, so we prepared. While we were sending diplomats to your council meetings, Dan continued, we were also building shipyards on the dark side of our moon. While we were exploring nearby star systems with peaceful science vessels, we were also testing weapons that could crack a planet in half. We showed you what we wanted you to see. You assumed that was all we had. Jake brought up another display. This one showed human history. Images flashed across the screen. Ancient warriors with swords and shields, medieval armies with castles and siege weapons, World War II with its tanks and planes, the nuclear age with its terrible weapons, and finally the modern era with all its advanced technology. This is what you didn't understand, Jake said quietly. We've been fighting since the beginning of our species. We fought with stones, then bronze, then iron, then steel. We invented gunpowder and used it to kill each other more efficiently. We split the atom and immediately turned it into a bomb. We went to space, and one of the first things we thought about was how to fight wars there. He turned to face the camera that was broadcasting his words across the system. Every human child grows up learning about war. We read about ancient battles. We study military strategy. We play games that teach us tactics. War is part of our culture, part of our history, part of who we are. We didn't become peaceful because we forgot how to fight. We became peaceful because we got tired of fighting each other, but we never forgot how. Warlord Crickstor finally spoke again. His voice was different now. Less confident. More cautious. You are saying your entire species is made up of warriors. Not warriors, Lisa corrected. Survivors. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived droughts and floods. We survived wars that killed millions. Every human alive today is descended from people who survived impossible situations. That's in our blood, Warlord. That's who we are. Jake pulled up one more display. This one showed the current tactical situation. The 30 Dracor ships in the center, surrounded by thousands of human vessels. Every human ship had its weapons locked on target. Every shield was at full power. They were ready to fight and everyone knew it. Warlord Crickstor, Jake said, his voice hard now. You came here thinking Earth would be an easy conquest. You thought you could just show up with your 30 ships and we'd surrender. You made a mistake. A big one, he leaned forward. And Ambassador Velcara, you made a mistake too. You came here thinking we needed protection. You thought we were children who didn't understand how dangerous the galaxy was. You were wrong. We understand danger perfectly. We've lived with it our entire existence. Jake stood up from his command chair. Behind him, his entire crew was watching. They all had the same expression, proud, ready, confident. These were people who knew exactly what they were capable of. Here's what's going to happen now, Jake said. Warlord, you're going to power down your weapons. You're going to lower your shields. And then we're going to have a conversation about how wars end and peace begins. If you refuse, if you try to fight, we will disable every single one of your ships. We won't destroy them because we're not murderers. But we will take them apart piece by piece until you have no choice but to surrender. He paused. And Ambassador, you and the Council are going to watch. You're going to see what happens when someone underestimates humanity. You're going to learn that we don't need protection. What we need is respect. What we need is to be treated as equals, not as children. The communication channels were silent. Jake could almost hear both Crickstor and Velcara thinking, trying to figure out their next move. The tactical display showed the fleet still frozen in position. Thousands of human ships, 30 Dracor vessels, and 5 badly damaged council ships that had witnessed everything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Crickstor spoke. His voice was quiet, almost respectful. You said you would not destroy us. You said you wanted to talk about peace. Why? We came here to conquer you. We would have killed millions of your people. Jake smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because, Warlord, we remember what it's like to be at war. We remember what it costs, and we decided a long time ago that if we ever got the chance to prevent a war instead of fighting one, we would take it. That's what makes us different. We can fight. We can win, but we'd rather not have to. Now, Jake said firmly, power down your weapons. Let's talk about the future. Both of you, all of us. It's time the galaxy learned who humans really are. Warlord Crickstor made his choice. It was the wrong one. The Dracor horde does not surrender. His voice boomed across the communication channels. We have conquered 50 worlds. We will conquer yours as well. Your numbers mean nothing. Your weapons mean nothing. We are Dracor. We do not know fear. Admiral Kate Sullivan sighed from her position on Sentinel Prime. She had hoped the Warlord would be smarter than this, but some people only learned lessons the hard way. All ships, she said calmly into her microphone. The Dracor have rejected our offer of peace. Engage defensive protocols. Target their weapons and engines only. Disable, do not destroy. I want prisoners, not bodies. The Dracor fleet opened fire. All 30 ships at once. Plasma beams, missiles, and kinetic weapons filled the space around them. It was an impressive display of firepower. The kind of attack that had destroyed planets and shattered moons. The human fleet barely noticed. Every human ship had point defense systems. Thousands of small laser turrets that could track and destroy incoming projectiles. As the Dracor missiles came screaming toward the human fleet, these lasers activated. Bright points of light filled the darkness. Each missile that got within range was hit, turned into a small explosion harmlessly far from any human ship. The plasma beams hit the human shields and simply scattered. The energy shields were designed using technology that humans had spent 5 years perfecting. They didn't just block energy, they dispersed it, spread it out until it was harmless. Not a single human ship took damage. Return fire, Kate ordered. Execute pattern Alpha 7. Show them what precision looks like. The human destroyers fired first. Their railguns launched metal slugs at incredible speed. These weren't explosive weapons. They were just chunks of dense metal moving at 30% the speed of light. When something that heavy moved that fast, it didn't need to explode. Physics did all the work. The first Drakkar ship took 3 railgun hits in quick succession. The slugs punched through its shields like they weren't even there. They tore through the hull, destroying weapon systems and engine components. Within seconds, the massive warship was drifting, powerless and harmless. A second Drakkar vessel tried to maneuver, to get a better angle for its weapons. The human cruisers targeted it with energy beams. These weren't the scattered plasma weapons the Drakkar used. These were focused laser beams, precise and devastating. They sliced through the Drakkar ship's engine section, cutting the drives cleanly away from the rest of the vessel. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen commanded the human carrier Valiant Strike. Around her carrier, 300 fighter craft launched into space. These were small ships, fast and agile. Each one was piloted by a human who had trained for years in combat simulations. "All wings, you know your targets," Amy said into her radio. "Disable their point defense first, then go after their weapons arrays. Stay tight, watch each other's backs, and remember your training." The fighters swarmed the Drakkar fleet like angry insects. They were too small for the big weapons to target effectively, too fast for the Drakkar to track. But each fighter carried missiles designed to take out specific systems on the larger ships. A Drakkar battleship tried to fire at the approaching fighters. Before it could shoot, 3 human fighters hit it with precision missiles. The first missile destroyed the ship's targeting computer. The second took out its main gun. The third disabled its shield generator. Within 30 seconds, a ship that had destroyed entire civilizations was floating helplessly in space. On the Freedom's dawn, Jake watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. It wasn't really a battle. It was a lesson, a demonstration. The Drakkar had brought 30 of their best warships. Humans were taking them apart like mechanics working on broken machines. 15 Drakkar ships disabled, Lisa reported. Another 8 heavily damaged. The rest are attempting to retreat. "Don't let them," Jake said. "Position destroyers at all exit points. I want them surrounded with nowhere to go." The human ships moved with perfect coordination. They had practiced these maneuvers thousands of times in simulations. Every captain knew exactly where to be, exactly what to do. Within minutes, the remaining Drakkar ships found themselves boxed in, with human destroyers blocking every escape route. It was a textbook encirclement. Military academies would study this battle for decades, analyzing how the humans had surrounded a fleet 3 times without a single wasted movement. Ambassador Velkara watched from his damaged council ship. His crystalline eyes reflected the lights of the human fleet. He had seen many battles in his long life. He had watched the council's forces fight pirates and raiders. He had seen what galactic warfare looked like. This was different. This was something else entirely. "They knew," he said quietly to his crew. "They knew exactly how we would react. They knew exactly how the Drakkar would attack. Every move, every strategy, they predicted all of it." "How is this possible?" his tactical officer answered. "Ambassador, according to our records, humans have been accessing the Council's military database for 3 years. They downloaded every battle record, every tactical analysis, every strategic report. They studied us, sir. They studied everyone." Velkara understood now. While the Council had been watching Earth, treating humans like children who needed guidance, the humans had been watching the Council right back. They had been learning, analyzing, preparing. They had taken every lesson the galaxy had to offer and used it to build something entirely new. The last intact Drakkar warship, Krixtor's flagship, ceased fire. Its weapons went offline. Its shields flickered and died. The massive ship just hung there in space, surrounded by 1,000 human vessels, all of them ready to continue the fight if needed. Warlord Krixtor's voice came through on the communication channel. It was different now. All the arrogance was gone. All the confidence had vanished. What remained was something that sounded almost like respect. "I have conquered 47 worlds," Krixtor said slowly. "I have led the Drakkar horde for 20 years. In all that time, in all those battles, I have never been defeated. Not once, until today." He paused. Jake could hear something in the background, the sounds of a damaged ship. "You could have destroyed us. Your weapons could have killed every Drakkar on these ships. But you chose not to. You disabled us instead. You showed mercy. Why?" Admiral Kate answered him. "Because, Warlord, we know what war costs. We've fought enough of them to understand that killing should always be the last resort, not the first choice. You came here to conquer us, but we don't want to destroy you. We want you to understand something important. What? Crixtor asked. That strength isn't just about weapons and ships, Kate said. It's about knowing when to use them and when to show restraint. It's about being powerful enough to destroy your enemies, but wise enough to turn them into allies instead. That's what we want to teach the galaxy, Warlord. Not fear, understanding. The Drakkar flagship drifted silently. Around it, 30 disabled warships floated in space, surrounded by thousands of human vessels. The Battle of Earth had lasted just 28 minutes. In that time, humans had proven something that would change the galaxy forever. They had proven that being peaceful didn't mean being weak. They had proven that being strong didn't mean being cruel, and most importantly, they had proven that the galaxy had severely underestimated them. The war was over. Now it was time for peace. And that, as it turned out, was where humans really excelled. 3 hours after the battle ended, representatives from 3 different groups gathered on Unity 1, Earth's largest orbital station. The meeting room was large and comfortable, with windows that showed Earth spinning peacefully below. The planet looked calm and beautiful, as if nothing dramatic had just happened. Secretary General Helen Martinez represented Earth. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and calm brown eyes. She had been a diplomat for 30 years and had helped negotiate Earth's first contact with alien species. Now she sat at a long table waiting for the others to arrive. Ambassador Velkara came first. He moved slowly, still recovering from the damage his ship had taken. His crystalline eyes were dim and he looked tired. He sat down across from Helen without speaking. Then Warlord Crixtor entered. He was massive, even bigger than Helen had expected. His species was reptilian, covered in dark scales that looked like armor. Scorch marks from the battle still marked his chest plate. He moved carefully, like someone who knew he was no longer in control of the situation. When everyone was seated, Helen spoke first. Her voice was calm but firm. Let me be very clear about something. Humanity does not want war. We have seen enough war on our own planet to last forever. We know what it costs. We know what it destroys. That's why we offered both of you the chance to surrender peacefully. She looked at Crixtor. Warlord, you rejected that offer. We were forced to disable your fleet, but we could have done much worse. We could have destroyed every ship. We could have killed everyone aboard them. We chose not to. Do you understand why? Crixtor was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, translated by a small device on his collar. Because you are strong enough to show mercy. I have conquered 47 worlds. Each time I thought I was showing strength by destroying those who resisted. But you showed me something different. True strength is having the power to destroy and choosing not to use it. He leaned forward. The Drakkar Horde withdraws all claims to your system. More than that, I request a treaty, a non-aggression pact between our species, and I ask permission to send my military leaders to study your tactics and strategies. You have taught us in one battle what we failed to learn in 100 years of conquest. Helen nodded slowly. Then she turned to Velkara. And you, Ambassador. The Council came here to protect us. You thought we were children who needed saving. You made assumptions based on what you wanted to see, not on what we actually are. That was a mistake. Velkara's crystalline eyes brightened slightly. Secretary General Martinez, you are correct. The Council made a grave error. We believed that any species developing warfare before unity would destroy itself. We have seen it happen many times. Species that fought each other never survived long enough to reach the stars. He paused. But you did. You fought terrible wars. You developed weapons that could destroy your entire world. And yet you survived. You united. You chose peace while still remembering how to wage war. This is something we did not think was possible. We owe your species an apology. Captain Jake Morrison, who was standing near the wall, spoke up. The galaxy needs to understand something about humans. We don't forget. Every war we've fought, every mistake we've made, every lesson we've learned, we remember all of it. When we finally reached the stars, we brought all that history with us. Not as a weapon, but as wisdom. Helen stood up and walked to the window. She looked down at Earth, the blue and green planet that had given birth to humanity. Here are our terms for the future. First, Earth joins the Galactic Council as a full member, not as a protected species, not as junior partners, but as equals with full voting rights. She turned back to face them. Second, We establish a joint military academy. Human officers will teach advanced tactics, strategy, and combat techniques. In exchange, other species will share their knowledge of the galaxy, their technology, and their cultures. We learn from each other. Third, Helen continued, we create a real peacekeeping force, not one that shows up after wars start to protect the weak, one that prevents conflicts before they begin, one that uses diplomacy first and force only as a last resort, one that treats all species with respect. Velkara stood up. The Council accepts these terms. I will recommend immediate approval when we return to the home worlds. Humanity has earned its place among us, not through protection, but through strength and wisdom combined. Krixtor also rose. The Dracor accept as well. We have much to learn from you, humans. Perhaps we can learn to be conquerors no more. Perhaps we can find a different path. Over the following weeks, news of the Battle of Earth spread across the entire galaxy. The story traveled from world to world, growing with each telling. The species that had seemed primitive and weak had revealed themselves to be anything but. The laughter of Captain Morrison became legendary. The tactical brilliance of Admiral Sullivan was studied in military schools. The wisdom of Secretary General Martinez was quoted by diplomats everywhere. But more important than the battle itself was what came after. Humans didn't gloat about their victory. They didn't threaten other species or demand tribute. Instead, they opened their doors. They shared their knowledge. They offered to help. Admiral Kate Sullivan found herself working with military leaders from a dozen different species. Together, they restructured the Galactic Defense Network, making it more efficient and more fair. They created new protocols for responding to threats. They established training programs that combined human tactical knowledge with alien technology. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen became the first director of the new Joint Military Academy. Officers from across the galaxy came to study under her. They learned human tactics, human strategies, human ways of thinking about warfare. In exchange, they taught humans about alien technologies, about different ways of approaching problems, about the diversity of galactic civilization. Even the Dracor changed. Warlord Krixtor sent his best officers to train with humans. They learned that conquest wasn't the only path to strength. They learned that cooperation could achieve more than domination. Slowly, the Dracor horde began to transform from conquerors into protectors. 6 months after the battle, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Freedom's Dawn once again. But now his crew included officers from 4 different species. His ship was leading a joint expedition to the frontier regions, where new civilizations were just beginning to explore space. Captain, Lieutenant Dan Cooper said from his station, we're receiving a distress call. A young species just achieved faster than light travel last month. They're being raided by pirates. Jake smiled. Set course. But Dan, this time we're not going as saviors or conquerors. We're going as partners. Send them our complete tactical database. Let them see exactly what we can offer. Let them make an informed choice about whether they want our help. Commander Lisa Wright pulled up the sensor display. Captain, we're getting messages from all over this sector. The Zenithians want our help negotiating a trade dispute. The Dracor are requesting advisors for their new defense academy. 3 other species want to send diplomatic missions to Earth. Good, Jake said quietly. That's how it should be. Not as warriors to be feared, not as children to be protected, but as partners who understand both the cost of war and the value of peace. That's what we always should have been. As Freedom's Dawn jumped to hyperspace, Earth remained behind, spinning peacefully in space. The planet was no longer hidden. It was no longer underestimated. And most importantly, it was no longer alone. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not through conquest or submission, but through strength tempered by wisdom. The stars had tested them and they had passed. Now the real work could begin. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council had changed. The Dracor horde had changed. And at the center of it all, humanity had become something nobody expected. Teachers, partners, and peacekeepers. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the new Galactic Military Academy on Luna, Earth's moon. The facility was enormous, built into the lunar surface with gleaming metal and glass domes that looked out at the stars. Officers from 30 different species trained here now, learning from each other, sharing knowledge that had once been kept secret. Jake passed a training room where human instructors were teaching Zenithian officers about guerrilla warfare tactics. In another room, Drakor veterans were learning about defensive strategies and peacekeeping operations. A third room held a mixed group practicing negotiation and conflict resolution. He found Admiral Kate Sullivan in her office reviewing reports. She looked up as he entered and smiled. "Jake, good timing. I just got word from the Frontier. That species you helped 6 months ago? They just joined the Council as full members. They specifically requested human advisors for their defense force." Jake sat down across from her. "That's the 5th new species to join this year. The Council is growing faster than it has in a century." "Because word is spreading," Kate said. "Species that were afraid of the Council before, that thought joining meant giving up their independence, they see what happened with us. They see that the Council can change, that it can be fair, and they want to be part of it." She pulled up a star map on her display. Blue markers showed human ships spread across dozens of systems. "We have over 500 ships on joint operations now, working with Council forces, Drakor vessels, even some of the species that used to avoid contact with everyone. People are talking to each other, Jake, actually cooperating." Jake looked at the map. It was beautiful in its own way. All those different colors representing different species all working together. "Do you ever think about that day? When Velkara showed up with 7 ships to protect us?" Kate laughed. "Every time I see him, he still looks embarrassed about it. But you know what? He's become one of our strongest supporters on the Council. He understands now that we didn't want protection. We wanted partnership," a chime sounded. Kate pressed a button on her desk. "Admiral Sullivan, Ambassador Velkara is here to see you." "Send him in," Kate said. Velkara entered the office. His crystalline eyes were bright now, no longer dim with stress or worry. He looked healthier, happier. He nodded respectfully to both humans. "Admiral Captain," he said, "I have news from the Council homeworlds. The decision has been made. Earth is being awarded the Council's highest honor for service to galactic peace. You are only the 3rd species in history to receive this recognition." Jake raised his eyebrows. "For what? We only defended ourselves." "No," Velkara said softly. "You did much more than that. You changed how the galaxy thinks about strength and wisdom. You showed us that peace requires power, but power doesn't require cruelty. You taught us lessons we should have learned centuries ago." He sat down, his 4 arms folding in a gesture that meant respect. "Before you, the Council believed we had to protect younger species from themselves. We thought they would destroy each other if left alone. But you proved that wrong. You fought your wars, yes, terrible wars, but you learned from them. You grew from them. You became stronger because of them, not in spite of them." Kate nodded slowly. "Ambassador, that's kind of you to say. But we're still learning. We make mistakes. We don't have all the answers. Nobody does," Velkara replied. "But you taught us something important. You taught us to ask better questions, not how do we protect the weak, but how do we help others become strong, and not how do we prevent all conflict, but how do we resolve conflicts peacefully. And these are better questions. They lead to better answers." Elsewhere on Luna, in a training facility designed for zero-gravity combat, Warlord Krixtor watched his officers spar with human instructors. The Drakor were learning new techniques, new ways of thinking about warfare. They were still warriors, but they were becoming something more. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen stood beside him. Over the past year, she had worked closely with the Drakor, teaching them not just how to fight, but why fighting should always be the last choice, never the first. "Your officers are doing well," Amy said. "They learn quickly." Krixtor's large head turned to look at her. "They are Drakor. We have always been warriors. But you have taught us that being a warrior is not just about strength. It is about discipline, about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. This is wisdom we lacked," he paused. "Colonel Chen, I must tell you something. The Drakor horde no longer conquers. We have released all the worlds we held, given them their independence. Many have asked us to stay, not as conquerors, but as protectors. We are learning a new way." Amy felt a warmth in her chest. This was what made it all worthwhile. Not the battles won, but the wars prevented. Not the enemies defeated, but the enemies turned into friends. "That's good to hear, Warlord," she said. "Your people have always been strong. Now you're learning to use that strength in better ways." Back on Earth, in the United Nations building in New York, Secretary General Helen Martinez met with ambassadors from across the galaxy. The room was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes. Crystalline Zenithians, scaled Drakor, gaseous beings in containment suits, and dozens of others. They were discussing a new threat on the far edge of the galaxy. Raiders attacking shipping lanes. The old council would have sent warships immediately, imposed their will, created order through force. But things were different now. We should talk to them first, Helen said. Find out why they're raiding. Are they desperate? Are they being forced? We can't help them if we don't understand them. A young ambassador from a recently joined species raised her hand. But what if they attack our diplomatic ship? Then we defend ourselves, Helen replied. We're not naive. We know sometimes force is necessary, but we try peace first. Always. Because peace is always worth trying for. The ambassadors voted. It was unanimous. They would send a diplomatic mission first, backed by a small defense force. They would offer help instead of demanding surrender. It was the human way, and it was becoming the galactic way. That evening, Jake stood on the observation deck of Luna Base, looking down at Earth. The planet turned slowly, peaceful, and blue. Lights twinkled on the dark side where cities glowed. The orbital defenses were still there, still active. 3,000 ships still waited in hidden positions throughout the solar system. Humanity hadn't forgotten how to fight. They had just learned when not to. Lisa Wright joined him at the window. Hard to believe it's only been a year, she said. Feels like everything has changed. Everything has, Jake agreed. The council was right about one thing. Young species need guidance. They were just wrong about what kind. They thought we needed protection. What we actually needed was respect, trust, the freedom to prove ourselves. And we did, Lisa said. We proved that being peaceful doesn't mean being weak. We proved that being strong doesn't mean being cruel. We proved that the best way to win a war is to prevent it from happening in the first place. Jake smiled. You know what the best part is? We're not alone anymore. We're not the only ones who think this way. Other species are learning. They're teaching their own people. The ideas are spreading. Dan Cooper walked up to join them. He had been promoted to commander now, and he wore the rank proudly. Captain, we just got our next assignment. Joint patrol with a Dracor squadron and a Zenithian science vessel. We're mapping new territories and making first contact with any species we find. When do we leave? Jake asked. Tomorrow morning. Freedom's Dawn is being restocked now. Jake took one last look at Earth, the planet that had given birth to humanity, the planet that had survived wars and disasters and had finally reached the stars, the planet that had taught the galaxy something it desperately needed to learn. That strength and wisdom were not opposites. That peace and power could exist together, that the best warriors were the ones who never had to fight. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had thought humans were weak because they seemed peaceful. They had thought humans were primitive because they were new to space travel. They had made assumptions, and those assumptions had been shattered in 28 minutes of battle. But the real lesson hadn't been taught in that battle. The real lesson came after, in the months of patient teaching and careful diplomacy that followed. The lesson that true strength wasn't about destroying your enemies, but about turning them into friends. Come on, Jake said to his crew. We have work to do. A galaxy to explore, people to meet, peace to maintain, and tomorrow, we start all over again. As they walked away from the window, Earth continued to turn below. The blue planet, home to billions of humans, now stood as a symbol of something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that had learned from its violent past and chosen a better future. A species that could fight but preferred not to. A species that had earned respect not through fear but through wisdom. The Galactic Council had vowed to protect Earth. The Dracor Horde had vowed to conquer it. Both had learned the same important truth. Humanity didn't need protection, and humanity couldn't be